I know we've got a time limit on this, and being archaeologists, of course, we want to keep to our times, so we will try to push through this at a good pace. But there's quite a lot to say. To be fair, it's quite complex what we're going to go through, I think, but hopefully interesting. So Jennifer and myself are Trysor. We, just as by way of introduction, if you don't know us, we set up Trysor. It's just us two. 21 years ago, I think, isn't it? We've had our 21st. And we do all sorts of archaeological projects. I won't list them here now, but one of the things we like to get involved in is community archaeology. And we do deliberately use the term community archaeology in the sense of projects driven by a community, not public archaeology, which we see as a different thing that archaeologists do. Okay. And the excavations we've done at Cwmffwrn in the last 3 years are very much driven by a community group, which I will mention as we go along. So if you hit the button, there's a background to the story that hopefully, yes, there we go. We'll give you a little bit of background to ourselves as well. Before we were Trysor, we were both employed by the Dyfed Archaeological Trust, which is now part of HENEB, of course. And we both had experience working on this particular project, the CADU-funded project. It was the Deserted Rural Settlement Study, which ran in the late 1990s into the early 2000s, and actually produced this book at the end, this synopsis of all the work called Lost Farmsteads, Deserted Rural Settlements in Wales. If you haven't seen it, you should get a copy. It's a lovely book. But I did a lot of field work on that project in Southwest Wales, and Jenny did a lot of the desktop work. And I must say that it was quite one of those projects that you take part in that's very formative in your ideas and your experiences. And I've never stopped being interested in settlement, particularly upland settlement. It's a thing that we both have had the opportunity to explore as our careers of development, and as Trysor indeed as well. We've done quite a lot of upland survey, which has given us an opportunity to do a lot of surveying in the sense of, yeah, go on, John, yeah, in the sense of being out in the landscape, finding archaeological sites and recording them. And this is up in the Eland Valley, the Cwmffwrn Valley, I should say, sorry, in Radnorshire. But typical upland settlement site is the platform, or the house platform, or the whatever you want to call it, which is simply a bare platform, and you can see one with a scale rod stuck in at the end of it there, just a flat area on the hill. If you go to the next, there's the same site looking side on instead of looking from the top. And so there you can see they've cut into the slope. There's what we call the fan of the platforms at the top, the relatively flat platform where a building would stand is then created by dragging earth forward to create a often sloping but relatively flat surface. And then bottom end we have if you press the next one, we have what we call the apron of the platform, which is where the soil at the end just trickles off down slope. And I think it's fair to say, in our time as field surveyors, in the last 20 odd years, or 20, 30, well, almost 40 years, I think it's probably fair to say we've, between us, recorded several thousand of these in the hills, okay? It's a very common upland settlement type. But this is the really frustrating thing about them, speaking as a very experienced upland field surveyor. I found loads of them. I couldn't tell you much about them. I know that they have a fan, a platform, an apron. I can measure them, the length, the width, and I can speculate, if you go on, that there was probably a timber frame building on it, because there's no stone. Generally, there's no stonework on these. Okay, so we make a presumption that they were the foundation platforms for timber houses, and I've deliberately put that in because it says building a small medieval house, because we also kind of tend to think they're medieval, okay, but we don't know, because when we record those thousands and thousands of platforms, we always record them, and when you get to the date field, it's period med post med, because we literally have no idea, and that's frustrating. I tell you, after 4 decades, I don't know, it's frustrating. But anyway, so let's presume that we're on the right track, because I say the absence of stonework generally would lead you to think of a wooden structure, presumably with a thatched roof. I don't know. But anyway, that's the next gen. So that's kind of important to the background to this story. But then the next stage of relevance to the story is that we got involved. I don't remember how, but we got involved with the Abbey Cwmffwrn Heritage Trust several years ago, who we sort of had interactions with over a longer period of time. But not that you can see much of that, but they exist very much as a community group that exists to promote the study and an understanding of the Abbey ruins at Abbey Cwmffwrn in Radnorshire, but also they're very keen on exploring the granges of the Abbey. Okay, they want to understand how the Grange economy worked, and they're always out there researching and doing their own field work, trying to identify settlements or boundaries or whatever, any old land deed they can get. They explore these granges and try to make sense, including the place names, the Welsh place names, and what they tell us. They're a really interesting community group, but they're very focused on that. That's their world, yeah, and they do tremendous work, to be honest with you. And they're very nice people as well. I've got to say, they're great to interact with. But a few years ago, and you see to the that side, the left, Gemma Bezant, is it right? I'm looking back to front. Gemma Bezant, now Gemma Sinclair, I think, isn't she? She did a little bit of excavation on it's an agricultural building, I think it's fair to say, on the Abbey Cwmffwrn estate lands. And they really got an appetite for excavation, to be fair, didn't they? They really, them as a group, they got well into it, and they wanted to do more. I think it was that post-COVID, Jen? I can't remember now. It's a few years back anyway. So if you go on the next slide, Jen. So we got involved with them, and that particular site was in a valley just sort of northwest of the Abbey, but on lands on the home grange of the Abbey itself. Now, in that valley, there's a farm called, modern farm called Cwmffwrn, where they fixed on some more settlement sites of varying periods, and they wanted to develop a program of excavation and study of these, because again, it's an important element potentially in the history of the home range of the Abbey, okay, so that you can understand their level of interest. So they, if I remember, I got the right track. Oh, there we go. Yes, I can show you where we are now. I should have probably done this earlier. There's the Mid Wales at the very top, and there's the excavation we're going to talk about in the middle of that map. There, you're none the wiser, are you? It's in that part of Mid Wales that you really only go to if you live there, right? Or you're digging. But it's a very remote rural valley. We would call it an upland site. I can't remember what the altitude is off the top of my head. So it's over 250 meters for certain. But it's a very secluded. We'll get some photographs as we go along. But the Abbey itself would be sort of just down off the bottom corner here somewhere. That's the Cwmffwrn sort of valley. The stream goes up, and so Cwmffwrn farm is at the top of the head of the valley, really. But the river flows all the way to see here now. There's Abbey Cwmffwrn just there. And if you press this button, I think it'll show you where. There you go. There's Cwmffwrn farm, which is nicely shown on the 1833 Ordnance Survey map. Fair play. Not that you can see much, but it's there. There's definitely a settlement there at that time. And I want to just go a little bit over the history of Cwmffwrn, because it's interesting and it relates to the excavation. So I'll try to do it quite quickly because I can get bogged down in this. If you go on. So if we look at 1817, the earliest Ordnance Survey map, you can see it in the middle. Again, if you hit the button, I think it'll circle it. But you can see Cwmffwrn marked there, and there is definitely a building there. Okay, that's all it shows. It's not very accurate, I'm sure, but there's a building with an enclosure. And if you flip onto the tithe, yeah, sort of an 1837 sale map, which is a bit of a mess, frankly. But if you hit the next button, you can see there's a building there, and another one, and there's probably a building there. It's a bit of a mess. It says 2379 above it, and then there's a little jumble of it, patch of ink, basically. Someone's made a mistake. So again, so we know in that first part of the 19th century, there's definitely a farmstead at Cwmffwrn, and its lands are actually coloured in on the sale map. All part of the Abbey Cwmffwrn estate, of course, not the monastic estate, but the the private estate, as it were, back in the day. So we go on a few years to 1842, and we get the tithe map. It was a slightly better version. And now because they back to Welsh places names, isn't it? Cwmffwrn becomes Cwmffwrn, which by today locally they try to make it say it the Welsh way. They call it Cwmffwrn because they don't understand it's Cwmffwrn originally, but we've tried to correct that. Very clearly, this map shows two buildings, right? And this is significant. Go on, Jen, next. I think the circles will pop up. There's one building who's slightly bigger than the second building above it, which is we'll come to. And you can see that Cwmffwrn is on the boundary. The Llanallturion sheepwalk is there. Cwmffwrn sheepwalk is higher up. The boundary there is the boundary of the common, okay? What you've got to that side, whichever side that is the common, and this side is enclosed. Okay, so this farm is a very sort of marginal sort of landscape, very, it's on the upland margins really in the 19th century, but the two buildings are still there. If we skip on a generation to the 1870s, the Ordnance Survey come along and do another survey, and what do we get now? Hit the button, Jen. Let's see what we find. We get an empty building. This isn't the same one we had on the last map. And there's the upper building that we saw, the other building that we saw on the other map. But there's a gap. If you hit again, sorry, hang on. You compare the tithe map with the two, as you can press the circle, that's the upper building. It's on both of them. That building, the larger building on the tithe map, isn't present there. But instead of that, we've got that building, which is hidden again, wasn't on the tithe map. So something significant has happened in the 19th century. And this seems random, but it is important to know. So what happens but in terms of the history? If you next one, Jan. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Just for you to get we call that one the upper building. Okay, we're going to call that one the platform, and we're going to call that one the cottage. Okay, keep it simple. So we look at the cottage. Okay, this is it's relevant. The cottage was built after the tithe map. Okay, so this is going to be 1840s, 1850s, but was already abandoned by the 1870s, 1880s. It only lasted a generation. The Abbey Cwmffwrn estate built it. They were building cottages for their tenants. I assume they didn't build them very well, and they abandoned them quite quickly, certainly this one. Now, after they worked with Gemma Besant, stroke St. Clair, the Abbey Cwmffwrn Trust people were so excited about excavation, they excavated the cottage themselves, okay? And if you just skip through a few photographs, they did a great job of clearing out the ruins of this old building. They found lots of features. They had sunshine. They had tons of 19th century pottery came out of it, and lots of bits of metal and all sorts of debris of 19th century life. And they ended up with big piles of stone. But I can't remember what you press the next button. Sorry. Look, that's it. So you can see the square of the house there. Okay. Keep going. So they dealt with that, and this is when they got in contact with us, because they were interested then in doing more. They sort of they'd done what they could do with the cottage, so they thought, let's look at the other stuff. Well, the upper building, which we're going to talk about very quickly, up there's not much to be done for this, because the next shot, the platform is still there where the building stood, but there's actually modern stables being added on it. So there's nothing to be done with that at all. Okay, but to give you an idea of the landscape, you can see the valley running off down to the southeast below you, blah, blah, blah. But the platform is a different kettle of fish. The platform is just alongside. If you hit the buttons, there's the cottage, there's the upper building or the stable as is now, but this platform is bang there. Now this is, on the tithe map, was a farmhouse, okay? Now it's a platform. And that's what it looks like. Now, as experienced upland archaeologists, that's a medieval platform. That's a good one. It's a nice one. It's got all the attributes of being a medieval house site. But it was a farmhouse in the 1840s, apparently. So the farmer, the landowners are fabulously interested in it, and members of the trust, I think, they'd had a little sort of circle around themselves, and they'd found lots of 19th century pottery and stone and stuff. But they were quite interested in, well, we need to excavate this properly. And we went to see it this day, and we said, this is a medieval house platform. This is before we'd looked at the maps, to be honest with you. I said, that's amazing. We should be excavating this. This looks fantastic. This is a one-off opportunity to actually study a medieval house platform properly, and in a controlled environment with a friendly landowner, and endless amount of time available to do it. So you carry on. So that's the platform. So 2023, Jenny's going to take over, because this is when Jenny kicks in. I don't know anything about this.
Is that right? Yep. Okay, right. Oh gosh, it is old. Yeah, so I actually wanted to get us involved with looking something that they found far higher up the slope. But when we saw the platform, we thought, oh, if it's there and we can have a look at this, then let's do that. So they had a bit of funding. I think this was via Pavo. Oh no, was it People's? Okay. And we said we'd do a weekend with them, and we offer people the chance to come along, and also give them the chance to learn things about excavation and things. Don't get too engrossed. So we set up a weekend thing. I will just mention this. I don't know whether Paul wants me to, but I'm going to anyway. It was a bit of an odd one because I ended up there on my own. Took my husband along because Paul lost a family member in horrid situation. So it was done with a bit of a background of that. But the Abbey Come Here group, they were aware of everything that was happening, and they were very supportive. And in fact, I don't think people who knew anything about what was going on in the background. But that's just a bit of the background. So I will say also the Abbey Come Here group, excellent at arranging things. Absolutely brilliant at organising, doing spreadsheets, sorting it all out, getting the stuff there. And, we'd been hard pushed to do it without them. So we came and we started to set the site up. Obviously, the platform's here on the right, and set ourselves up there. We also, we didn't, did you mention the landowners before? Ian and Angela, who own the land, are they're bowled over by this stuff and by what the group's been doing themselves, and also by an excavation on their land, and want to get in there generally and whatever. And so what we started with this year was just tidying up some of the areas that Angela had a little look at already. She didn't go down far. She just took the turf off to expose the stone. But that's why although they looked a bit bitty, that's why we chose the two areas we started. We had volunteers in every day, or participants every day, who were coming. And I think we had 18 people. They didn't get along on time on site, partly because at that point the site, we hadn't got too much for them to do, but they did a series of 4 activities. They went for a walk to have a look at other sites. They did some surveying, and my husband did pottery handling with them as well. And the site cleaned up nicely, parts of it, and started to lead us to think, oh, okay, there is definitely something worth looking at here. Possibly these stones on the right might be part of a floor surface, but in fact, the stones at the top end were the things that became of more interest later on. Again, just another one thing about this site, which in this year was quite problematic, was that you can see the way they cut it into slope, and at the top of that slope, either there already was a spring, or a spring is now. And so water flows very nicely down the ditch that they've got on the side. And walking in this area, or even we tried to take more off in this area, but you can see the quagmire that was there. Possibly that is of potential interest, because it does seem to be waterlogged a lot of the time, and we have found bits of wood and things up this end, so it does offer another opportunity in the future, possibly. Danny? And this is a second bit of the area in the middle of the flat part of the platform. And again, we got some stone surfaces, maybe a bit patchy on the right hand side. We'll come back to those in a minute. And we recorded what we got. We only did 2 days on site. We did a day set up, 2 days on a weekend, and a day afterwards. But it got the group really interested in finding out more. There was obviously potential there, so we came back. These are just some of the finds from that excavation. Not a lot, mostly 19th century, possibly even 20th century. 20th century is a bit odd. 19th century you could tie to the other cottage, and they were dumping their stuff. But we know that the cottage disappeared in the later 19th century, and the current farmhouse at Cwmffwrn was built 15 years ago. So where the more modern looking stuff may have come from, we're not quite sure. There isn't anybody close by, it's fair to say, especially now. So we did that. The group wanted to do more. So we said, right, we'll come back and we'll extend it a bit more. We'll do a weekend where the public can participate, and we'll do a day either side where the group could actually be the people on site and getting involved. Because, you know, we wanted very much to build up their skill base, to understand what needs doing, how to do it, etc. We'd put the site to bed with tarpaulins over it, but this is what it looked like when we came to it in the spring. And the group and Angela, the landowner, got the strimmers out to take it all down. But you can see very much where these rushes are, that's the wet area, so the top end and down the ditch down the side. And then by some miracle, it looked like this. We've opened up more areas. We didn't want to open up the whole area at that point. We wanted to get a section down the site, and we also didn't have the numbers of people to open up everything. But that's looking down at the top platform, or the upper platform, and the lower platform, which we haven't mentioned yet. And many thanks to Julian Reves for the drone photograph. Here we see people working on site. Those stones in the middle are the possible flooring that we saw earlier. And again, just the general setup of what we were doing. People had a chance to get involved with other things. And I think also in the middle of it, we had a Chartered Institute for Archaeologists inspection as well on site. So we're in the middle. I'm in the middle there talking to somebody from Headland Archaeology. So it's a busy time. This is just another view of the site, which gives you a better idea maybe of how it's laid out. But the bit on the left-hand side is the upper platform. Then you've got an apron just above that tape, and you come down onto the lower platform. And this is the ditch. Not looking so rushy that year. Oh, okay. Okay, that's okay. There we go. And here, just to show you how it's cut in. So the fan is cut into the slope at that end. We don't quite know where it starts and ends at the minute because of the problems with the wet and the rushes. You've got the level area, levelish. It's got slight runoff down slope. You've got the apron of the top fan, and then you've got the lower fan and its apron. I won't say what those two things are at the minute, but you've got a brown blob there, and you've got, well, it's meant to be blue, I guess, but it looks purple. Purple blob up there. Oh, okay. Right. Okay. A very rough thing drawing everything together. Go on, press that off. That's it. So looking at the bits of the site, this is Trench A. This is what we did in 2024. One of the most noticeable things through it is actually there's just a gully going through there, and that seems to have been dug more recently to try and help get some of this water away, but not necessarily that recent. I think we're feeling it's a bit late, a bit earlier than we thought it was. You can see some flat stones, which may be a floor, but then you can also see where the ranging rod is. There's a line of stones, a straight line of stones, with one possibly up there that's been pulled out the line by somebody doing something to it. So nice line there, and then a curved line beyond it. I'm not going to say any more than that really at the minute. Okay, well I will now. You can see again this water at this top end. Last year again it was quite wet, and it was a little bit limited what you could do in this area without messing things up. But the particular things, there's the gully. This arch along the arc is what I'm trying to say, along the bottom, is actually a stone-lined drain. And there were stones in the middle bit there, but we lifted those. And it's a very simple little drain. It's basically stones stuck in a V, flat stone on top, but it still would take water. So that's quite nice. It curls around there. We've got a small post hole. Another possible post hole. That stone there that's on top, we think has been pulled out of this line of stones by the ranging rod, because there's a gap just to the bottom side of the circle where it fit in. That's the straight line coming through. This is just a picture of the drain. When we started to take some of the capstones off just to have a look at it. You can see it was a bit wet then, really. But here you can see at the bottom how the stones just dip in. So the area of this drain that water would have to go through is quite small. You know, it's not a very substantial thing, but they obviously needed to find some way to just divert water around off this thing. Next one. So this is Trench B. Yes. And this is where we've got these two parts of flat stones. There we can see one of them better. Have you do your arrow? That's it, right. One of the things we didn't pick up in the first year was, we're busy sat there telling the group and the participants, all about stratigraphy. So the lowest is the oldest, and the one at the top is the youngest. Yeah, except it's not here. Because that we couldn't work out why these stones were raised so much, but that one stone in particular showed the answer, is that there'd been bracken growing on here. The bracken roots had gone underneath it and decayed. They created a layer. It has got some roots still in it, but by and large it's a soily layer. So you just think, oh yeah. But that is actually then the most recent thing, and it's gone underneath the stones and lifted them up, complicating it a little bit. We've got this area which we've looked at further and isn't just a pile of flat stones. It's actually stones that are tilting into something. These ones at the bottom, that you can't see it quite so well, but they actually are tilting and suggesting that actually we've got a pit or a post hole under there that the stones are falling into. So it's not just a flat surface. um, and I don't know how well you can see them, but where the arrow's pointing there, you've got the flat stones on the other side, and you've got this basically upright stones. Is there a picture next? All right, okay. We're also wondering about these stones here. They're very rough. You could easily just pick them up; they disappear. Okay, I'll go speed up. But we're wondering whether they might be post pads. They might be somewhere where either not necessarily a post pad. It could just be supporting a beam that has something coming onto it. There you can see in the middle that vertical line above the ranging rods. Those are stones set straight on their edges. They're not burnt. The area around them isn't burnt. So they don't seem to be a hearth, which might be your first thought, that there was an edge for a hearth or something like that. So we're not quite certain what those are. We're also wondering, around the top of those stones, there's a bit of an arc. Everybody sees it and says, "Oh, look, there's an arc there." And we're wondering whether we've got a different sort of drain around the top of there. We might not have, but it's something that we're interested in looking at. Go on. So this is Trench C, so this is what we did in 2024 in particular, and we exposed more detail. In this area in particular, there's a stone spread, but not just a stone spread. Some parts of it have got burnt material in it, burnt soil, bit of burnt stone, but also they've got lumps of clay. These are lumps of clay that are not like the clay that the platform's built of. They're quite a grey, clean, smooth clay. And we'll come to that in a second. Where we've got this sill beam slot, in this one you can't see it as well. We'll come to another photo in a second where you can see it better, that it's coming through the area there. And here we seem to have a later pit that's cut into the lower platform and truncated it a bit. And that's our significant spot. We're looking for dating for this thing. We got some charcoal from there. So we managed to get a radiocarbon data from actually within the platform makeup, which gives the date late 16th, early 17th. And we're thinking that the lower platform might actually be later than the main platform. So we start to get a hint there that we might be able to push the date of this platform back later. Go on. That's just a photo of the top with the stone spread. So you've got one side, you've got what we think is pile up from that gully having been built across the top. We've got the stone spread. You probably can't see it, but there are these lumps of this greyish clay in there. And that's where what we're thinking was a timber slot at the bottom end of the upper platform. This also has got lumps of that clay. So just above where the arrow is, I don't know if this is something that looks like it might be slowed. No, that's fine. Go on to that one. which is where those brown blobs are there. So we've got a slot, and it does actually go all across the platform, we have found out, with these lumps of clay around. I'm jumping around a little bit. We also had more pottery, but we also had that bottom piece of pottery in the bottom left there, which is that in close up. And my husband has been to the pottery handling collection type thing at Henneb and has compared it. And the thing that he says it most closely compares to is a siltstone tempered ware that dates the 13th century. So, at that point, we were very pleased with ourselves. So, 2025, we decided to go back. The group really wanted us to be involved. We did it in a slightly different way. They didn't get funding. They weren't in a position to go and apply for things. They had things going on in their life. So we got funding in a different model. OCU Group sponsored us to do excavation work. And then we had trainees who were paying for training, 5 days, 6 days of training. And we had donations and other things as well. Before we even started in April, we went to have a look at the site, and we were walking around, and there were some molehills on the bit where the tent is when we've been doing stuff, and picked this up. And again, my husband has taken it and compared it to the pottery handling collection thing, and he believes this is Rutland ware, which again comes to 13th century or so. This was just lying on the ground. Anyway, so we had that in the bag. So we've got a radiocarbon date and some pottery. So we started on the hottest weekend of the summer. Yeah. And with participants who just came for a day. And they did various things, taking off the turf, etc. It was very hot that day. Well, both the days of the weekend, they did really well. We had a gazebo, we had a little fan to keep everybody cool, but we got there. Gone. As you can see, we kept moving it so they were covered up. Gone. And they got certificates for what they were doing the day. And then for the rest of the week, we had 5 trainees with us for the week. They're the ones in orange. And we took them through a variety of things, trying to get them the basic skills. They had a mix of reasons for being there, a little bit of a mix of knowledge base. Some of them had actually done stuff before. And we mixed that with inviting other people to come in to do things. This was Vic Pardo was coming with his handling collection. He does experimental archaeology and replicas and things. So they did that. And we got to work on the site. So they got to do a bit of everything. They got to plan. And this is what it looked like after we'd taken the turf off and finished. So we could start to open up areas that we hadn't seen before. So, this is where that timber slot is. And you can see that's the little brown dots that was on the section of the platform. You can see there's actually a dark line going through, and that is indeed where there is a slot. This is just at the top end. We extended further into the wet patch because it was dry, hot and dry. We could actually go a bit further back, so we did that. We found, well, I'll come to that in a minute. Actually, go very quick minute. This is when we started to excavate the slot. We haven't taken everything else out yet, but it is very definitely slot, and it's got lots of that lumps of clay. So our feeling about this is that we have got a slot for a timber beam with probably clay door walls with it. I think we're getting confident enough to say that. But as we start to take off other layers, we start to find other things. We think we've got a post hole there and there, possibly one up there. There's another feature coming in here. So what looked really at the beginning like it didn't have much potential, it looked like a bit of a bare platform. Actually, we're getting quite a lot out of this one, which may be a surprise. And on the very last afternoon, where the circle is there, I'll just go back a minute. This is the drain, which is obviously the blue purple thing on the section. And you can see now it's a bit drier. You can see how the stones are tilting in. Where the circle was, we found this, which again, my husband believes to be this siltstone tempered ware. What's the next word? Oh, okay. And then after the last day, when we were tidying up, the owners had a hectic summer, so they hadn't been able to cut down their site. So we let them come down and lift some of the stones that were to the other side, these down here, where we could see lines. And we've actually got intersecting drains that come down to that arc of a drain. So they've put quite a system in here. But because Angela would just have loved to visit with all week, so that was really nice we could do that with them. And we put the site to bed for the moment. We are planning to go back next year. The group are very keen, and we hope to do 2 weeks, and hopefully we can maybe crack it and answer all the things. Do you want me to just finish? You can do it 2 minutes. Quick. He can do 2 minutes.
We will literally get one. I just want to make one comment, because everything we've shown you, what are we missing? Where's the 19th century farmhouse? It's not there, is it? So how do we reconstruct this site? What are we looking for? We have no idea. We've got random postals, med pottery. We're very firmly in, this was a timber framed farmhouse. There's no roofing slate, there's no stone, so it's thatched, mud walls, clay walls. It's gone, it's just disappeared. So it's quite a job. Angela, the farmer, is an artist, and she's on to us all the time. She wants to paint, reconstruct it. We can't help you. We have no idea what we're looking at. So that's future work, really. I mean, you can stop at that point, John, because I don't want to go any further. But what's wonderful about this is having that community element, favourable landowner, and the opportunity to play and to explore and take time and go back, which is missing in archaeology too often these days. To be honest, we've always got a gun at our heads, the time, the clock, like now. So I'll stop at that point. Thank you.